Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. The draft is the time for hope, and hope is undefeated in April, right? Like, hope is the Pat Mahomes dynasty. It's the 400-time back-to-back-to-back champion. Nothing is more undefeated than hope. And as we approach the draft, we have to talk about what our hopes are for this draft. So I'm bringing on the number one Cleveland Hope specialist in the city, Abby MUELER, to help me talk about this. Ab, it's an interesting time for the Browns because they brought back Joe Flacco. There seems to be some people who have hopes for that. I have my concerns that he's not going to be able to offer you 17 games worth of like production. But to be fair, a lot of these people are just happy that it ain't going to be.
Yeah. Just so fair. It is so fair.
And I get it. It's been a tumultuous few years, and it's more stomachable than like Kenny Pickett starting week one. At least you got good memories of this guy in your jersey. So, you know, there's a lot of hope going around, right? Right now, we can be hopeful about Joe Flacco. We don't care that he's 40 in April, right? We don't care about any of the other stuff with him, or, you know, maybe Kenny Pickett turns it around. Like, we can legitimately hope that, right, in April. And then we turn around to the draft. Browns have the number 2 pick. This is the best 2 picks, 2 and 33, that they've had since the Watson trade, right? Since they took Greg Newsome. These are the 2 highest picks since they
during
took
the pandemic. So that's how long ago that was.
They did the draft on Zoom that year, I believe, right? Well,
that was when it was in Cleveland, but it was that was when we took, I think that's when we took Greg.
We took Greg and JOK that year, right? Because Miles did the pick and he wore this army green suit and he looked like an action figure about to break out of the suit, like while he was doing the draft.
Zoom year was our last like earliest pick, which would have been Jedrick Wills. So that's how long ago this is also.
Yes. It's been a very long time since the Browns have had top 35 picks. They got 2 of them in this year's draft. They have 10 picks or 9 picks overall. And I think there's 2 parts to hope for the draft. There's how you hope to feel after the draft. And that matters kind of, right? But then there's how you hope to feel 3 years down the line. Now, here's the thing with the draft. It's usually not a good sign if you're talking about, well, we're going to be feeling better about this in 7 years, right? The day after the draft. That's never really a great sign.
You don't like your guys then.
It's also not a great sign if you're talking about how you felt the day you drafted this player 10 years down the line. I don't remember how I felt when we drafted Myles Garrett, but when he jumped over the line and blocked the field goal, I remember how I felt, right? Like, that's the stuff that's going to leave more of an impact. So there's a balancing of like how important it is. But when you look at, let's talk about the short-term part of it first. The short-term hope of how you feel at the end of this draft. What do you hope to feel better about when the Browns conclude their 3 days of drafting here?
Yeah, look, like you said, they have a lot of picks. So, you know, whether they're trading some of those for anything in the future or what's going to happen, they're going to be making a lot of picks. So I think, you know, regardless, we're going to start feeling better about this team because we haven't had these type of picks at this level in a very long time. So that's going to feel good for fans. You know, I think there's a couple of position groups I'm actually really interested to see what they do and how good that's going to make me feel for, you know, the immediate future. Yes. And of course, down the line, because you hope that anyone you're drafting is going to help you down the line as well. One of those being running back, actually. I think it's a good running back class in general. And I think it's something, obviously, the Browns have been lacking ever since Nick Chubb went down, haven't quite found their footing with the run game. So I if they're coming out of this draft with, a mid-round running back, I'm gonna feel pretty good about that. Also offensive line, which is a immediate need, but also a future need because a lot of these guys, I'm unsure of like how many more seasons they're going to be playing in general or going to be playing with the Browns. So while, they might not be playing this season, I will feel a lot more comfortable if we are fixing some of that. Because even if, the guys that we do have on this roster right now on the offensive line are playing this season, injuries happen. Injuries happened quite a bit last season to that group. So having some depth there, I think, is going to make me feel a little bit more confident. A quarterback's the biggest conversation, but I would say outside of that, those two groups are the ones that I'm pretty interested to see what they end up doing.
Yeah, I think short term, I want to walk out the draft feeling like there is a cohesive plan for every player they take in the top 100, right? Like there is a plan that they're willing to commit to and that it makes sense. Whether
Yeah.
it's the prospect I want, you just got to learn to live with it, right? Whether you agree or disagree on the evaluation of the prospect,
Yeah.
right? But you want to see a plan. And that was my big thing with the Ika thing. Did I agree with the evaluation of Ika? No, I was very much dead set against it. But that's not what made me upset about it. It was the lack of plan around the pick, right?
Yeah.
That was very apparent because, like, well, you're going to make him lose weight, and then he never lost weight, and then he did lose weight, and then you didn't play him. And it's like, well, what are we doing? What was the
Right.
plan here, right?
Right.
Like, I can deal with you wasting a pick, quote unquote, because you just didn't hit on a player. That happens all the time.
Mhm.
Pittsburgh misses on players. Baltimore misses on players. Kansas City misses on a ton of players, right? Philadelphia misses on players, right? I don't really care about that. I know people are going to judge you super harsh on whether you hit on this player or didn't.
Yeah.
That shit don't matter to me as much. It's like, is there a plan? Like, did this player fail because he just couldn't live up to the plan like Anthony Schwartz? Which there was a clear plan there, right?
Yeah.
Like, doesn't bother me as much because good Lord, there was a plan.
Yeah.
He could not live up to it.
Mhm.
Or is it a player who comes here and feels directionless and is directionless?
Mhm.
And that ends up impacting their development. And maybe they find somewhere else to live up to those expectations on, right? And I think the most important thing is with those top two picks, hey, if you go Travis Hunter,
Mhm.
I don't want to hear how like you're gonna not commit to what he does special, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't try to sell me on we're just gonna take the unicorn off the horse and ride the horse,
Yeah.
right? Like, you gotta tell me that you have a plan or make it feel like you have a real like strategy to use him successfully. And if you take a
Yeah.
quarterback, I've been thinking about this, and it's like the reality is I'm not gonna love it if you draft Jalen Milroe and say, all right, you got a year to prove it to me. Right? Like, I don't think that's a good use of it. If you're going to invest the 33rd pick in there, you got to come up and say, hey, like, how many starts is enough? Is it 17? Is it 36? Right?
Yeah.
I think most guys, you figure out by the end of their second full year starting whether they'll
Yeah.
be good or not. How good? Who knows? But like, if you put together two good seasons in 50 starts back to back, I feel pretty good about you as a quarterback going forward. But that's a lot of time. Like,
Yeah.
we're talking about sitting him for a year and then working on, potentially getting up to 50 starts, right? With Baker Mayfield, it took 70 starts before before he started the chain that would be back-to-back good seasons for him.
Right. Right.
And I think that question needs to be answered. Like, okay, what's the plan? If you do go to quarterback, like, I need to know that you're sold organizationally on him, even
Mhm.
if you pick him at 33, even if you pick him at 67,
Yeah.
and that you're going to get this 3 years or 2 years or
Yeah.
a real run. Because if we're just drafting a quarterback every year, we're wasting time. I know people say that on the internet all the time, but it's a waste of time,
Yeah.
right? You're going to draft a guy, give him 2 months to prove it, and then throw him away, and then like,
Right.
he shows up somewhere else and is good, and now we're pissed, right? But we
Right.
created that situation. So
Especially when you have like Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett as the two quarterbacks on your roster. Like, I think if you're investing, like you said, pick 33 or even a little bit later after that, I think, from the fans' perspective too, they're gonna want to see that guy out there and start developing him as early as they can.
mhm.
I've been critical of the Joe Flacco hope. I'm happy for people that they're so excited. I get it. I don't have as much confidence that he's going to be able to last the full season and that he will look like the Joe Flacco of 2 years ago. I don't have a lot of confidence in that. Um, but I do feel like, he can probably give you a couple games if you need to. I'm on the same page as you though, that I would feel much better about if we take one of those quarterbacks in the second round range, that they should be getting some significant time. And you got to see what you have there, because if you get those answers, then you can move forward and you can be more clear on what your direction is. If you are able to get those answers earlier rather than later.
Yeah, and it's like I think sometimes people think you could just find a quarterback by speed dating, and like I
Yeah.
don't know if people have ever speed dated
We've
in real
done that.
life.
The Browns did that for the last 20 years. Has it worked?
Yeah, I don't know if people have ever speed dated in real life. There's not a lot of success stories from
No.
that format, right? It's not a great way to
Yeah.
find a match there, right?
Right.
And it's you can't just force it, you can't rush it. It has to be right. And like if you look at him at 33, it's not just the calculus. And I'm doing a whole video on this where I explain it in more detail. But it's not just the calculus of like, hey, like we're going to take him at 33. Let's see what happens. It's like, okay, we're going to take him at 33 and like, hey, this could take us out the next 2 years. Cause like we're talking about a really long term, we're talking about this hitting when he's 25, right?
Yeah.
Like, and really knowing about this when he's 25. So, are you willing to commit that? Are you saying that he is as good as a prospect as you can get or hope to get in the late first round
Mhm.
conversation, mid to late first round conversation with the next two draft classes? Are you okay with that? Are you okay with what the ceiling is
Yeah.
there with him? And do you think he can sustain his ceiling? That's another question, because he might hit his ceiling early and then that's it. It's 3 years. And then you spend like the next 4 years. We know what this is like, trying to get that ceiling back, right?
Yeah.
Like you really got to have those long-term conversations there. And as long in the short term, I feel like that about the picks that they make there. I feel like, okay, whether I agree with the valuation, whether these are prospects that I love or not,
Mhm.
is there a plan behind this? Is there a strategy behind this?
Mhm.
And is that plan coherent? Does
Yeah.
this player make sense for that plan? Okay, cool. I can live with it. I'll give it a chance to see if it works, and I'll do that with any GM, right? But if I leave the draft being like, man, I just we traded back, and then we ended up getting like Tyler Warren, and when's he gonna play? We got David Njoku, and
Yeah.
he's 25, and it's like if it doesn't make sense, if there's no real flow to it, if it just seems like we were just doing shit,
Yeah.
and I've seen what drafts look like when your team's just doing shit. That's where I'm going to be very skeptical about what is even going on there, because this is supposed to be the anti doing shit organization right now,
Yeah.
right? Like this is supposed to be the reason you hire these guys. They're supposed to be the men with the plan, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you want to see, right? What's
Right.
the plan, right? You hire Ivy League. You want the plan. You want the Cornell notes and all that shit. Like you want the formula. There should be a formula and a real strategy to what you're doing, because that's why they're here, is because we had decades of ownership and leadership that just went off vibes and how
Yeah.
the grass smelled that freaking day or whatever
Yeah.
dumb shit that
The
people
homeless
want to
man on the
do.
street telling
Yeah,
you to
like,
draft Johnny Manziel.
yeah, it's like whatever flavor of the month, Jim
Yeah.
Irsay gets you to trade Trent Richardson or whatever it is that makes you make these decisions. And then this is why they're here. And that's why I need to see. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it makes me think of last year towards the end of the season when the offensive line, I think it was like Batonio. I forget who else who was talking about this, but really saying that like the things that the Browns had been doing well over the years and had kind of been finding players that fit their identity, they had completely shifted what that was. So the players kind of weren't fitting the current Browns that existed last year. And that was part of why I think everyone looked so lost. So I think that really ties into what you were saying about like having a plan for these guys and being like, how are they going to fit into this organization? We're not just willy-nilly making these choices. We want to pick people that we have a true plan for within whatever position that they play, and feel like they have a future. And I think I do believe that the front office will look at things that way after the moves that they have made with the coaching staff this offseason. and just kind of getting back on track to saying, okay, we want to do what we do best. Where last year it was kind of like, we just got to make this Watson thing work, and we'll do that at any cost, even if it doesn't align with our typical identity.
Yes. Now transitioning to some of the long-term stuff, right? You have the 2 pick, you have 33. Now, I'm not going to be too specific on what picks have to hit, right? Because it doesn't work that way. But with these resources, I think it's fair to expect that you add a couple of starters,
Mhm.
1 Pro Bowler, and you want your number 2 overall pick to be an all-pro caliber player, right? Like at least a Pro Bowler, but you're aiming for an all-pro guy, right?
Yeah.
You want somebody who can be up there in the same class as Miles and Denzel. They don't have to be better than Miles. That's going to be hard to do, but you got to be in that same class. You got to be in the conversation for best players at your position, or if it's Travis Hunter, you have to be Travis Hunter, right?
Yeah.
Like what people are expecting you to be
Yeah.
on at least one side of the ball. You know, I
Or if they
tend
go
to.
Abdul Carter too, like what he's expected to be, like he
Mhm.
should be hitting those levels, Pro Bowler, hopefully all pro, just with how he is as a prospect.
Yes, yes, he should be in that conversation for best young edges.
Yeah.
And I think this hits on something important, right? People bring up all the time, oh man, Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett, those 2 best players in the Browns. Who drafted them? And like it's like a gotcha with like John Dorsey, but it's like one of the answers to that question is like Sashi Brown. And I don't think anybody's advocating to bring back Sashi Brown anytime soon. But it's like the common denominator between those two, Myles Garrett was the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
Yeah.
Denzel Ward was the number 4 overall pick. Now, I might be crazy here, but I think the proximity to number 1 matters in the
Yes.
draft.
A little bit
I think,
easier to hit on those, I think. Maybe,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah. I think the earlier you pick, the better. I think it
Yeah.
is the strategy for the NFL draft. And you get the number 2 overall pick. You want to get somebody that you feel reasonably good about. You can't have guarantees. There's no guarantees in the draft, but they're players you feel much better. You felt better about drafting Von Miller than like Ryan Tannehill, right? When they came out of college. Both ended up being Pro Bowlers, right? But like there was a gap between how confident you were in Von and how confident you were in Ryan Tannehill, because different players have different bodies of work and all that. You should walk out this draft with at least 1 all-pro player that we can add to that core of Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, right? A guy that somebody has to game plan for, right? Another guy that when Mike Tomlin's talking about has to call Mr. last name, right? Mr. Garrett, Mr. Ward, Mr. Chubb, Mr. Hunter, Mr. Carter, Mr. something, right? You got to get a game change, an impact player from that number 2 pick. And then with whatever you have with the rest of your top 100 picks and everything else, you got to add some starters and some high level starters within there, right? Or a Pro Bowl starter on top of that, because this team needs to get younger and they need to get their impact players earlier. Andrew Berry's 2021 draft and 2022 drafts weren't great, but I think his 2023 and 2024 draft has been good. I think that since Catherine Racine has joined the staff, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I do think that like Andrew's a pro personnel guy, and I think having an extra scout there is very important for him to help make better decisions with the draft, since he's more of a pro personnel guy and always has been more of a pro personnel guy. And hopefully that leads to better decisions going forward in the draft. But this is one like, hey, this is the most important offseason of Andrew Berry's life right now, right? Like the long-term sustainability of this project is going to be determined by how well he drafts this year. And if he adds these players at these key positions, I don't think you have to get a quarterback out this draft, but you want, if you do draft one, there has to be a plan. I'm willing to like, hey, we gave Milroe a couple years. That's who we bet on. It didn't work out. I'm willing to live with that, right? I think to a point, Jimmy's willing to live with that, right? Because that's what the whole swing and a miss comments about. We had a plan. We gave that plan every chance it had, and it just didn't work. All right, man. Like it wasn't an organizational failure. It's just a bad decision that didn't work out. It is what it is. But you're willing to do that at quarterback. Because I don't want to just sit there and be passive about the position.
Right.
So that's to me the long-term goals that I want to get out of this is like, you need an all-pro player, right? Like, I think you get that all-pro player. I think everything else in the draft matters a lot less, but you
Yeah.
want to get that all-pro guy.
It almost feels like in a way they're making up for lost time and how these last couple of years not having a first round pick, it puts this like extra level of pressure on this year to really get an all pro type player. Because the first year you don't have the first round pick, you don't necessarily see all of the effects of it, but a couple years down the line, you start not having those type of guys on, rookie contracts. You start, looking around saying like, wow, this roster looks completely different. And you need to start getting some of those guys that are talented starters that you have on those cheap rookie contracts. So I think that's something that they definitely need to get back because yeah, like the first year when we drafted Watson, it was like, okay, it's fine. We still have all the pieces. Nothing really changed. But 3 or however many years it is down the line now, you're really starting to see the effects of what happened there.
Especially like positions like wide receiver, right? An edge where it's hard to get a free agent.
Yep.
That's why I think we've had to get creative, right? If it weren't for that Jerry Jeudy trade working out, then like this situation looks horrific.
Worse
right,
in the league
wide receiver.
at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, like it looks horrific, but you got lucky there and you've had to get creative. You haven't really you've just signed veterans to play on the opposite end of Miles, so you didn't hit the same way you hit with Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
But that's why you've had to get creative over the years at those two positions specifically, because you can't just solve it in free agency, right? Like those are positions you got to draft well. Quarterback is a position you have to draft well. Why do we have to play DTR so much? Well, it's not like we had the first round pick to just draft somebody, right? Like in the first round. Yeah, so we went with DTR, right? And that's the guy that we went with. And even DTR got a couple of years that we committed to him. So yeah, I think adding to this talent pool and walking out of this draft and looking back at it in a couple years and saying, okay, this is where we start to add the new core, right? The Miles is going to probably be the best player on the team for a long time. He's 28. So I give him, he seems like he's going to age well, but let's say like 35, right? Who's going to join Miles as the other best player on the team? Because I don't think that Denzel's going to last that long, right? Like who's going to be the other guy there, right? We're starting to see Nick Chubb, not at that point anymore. Yeah, right. I think there's a chance he could play really well still, but not at that point anymore where he's like one of the definitive best players on the team. Who's going to join Miles?
For like a leadership and like, that type of example on the team standpoint, less on, on the field at that point.
Yeah, you want to add somebody here that makes teams think about playing you, and makes you excited. Like who are people going to buy the jersey for? Right? Is it going to be 95 for the next 10 years, or are we going to add a 12 or 11 to that? Right? Yeah. What's going to get the people excited? This is a great year for a running back. Got to get a running back, right? Yeah. Got to get you a starter at running back because like what we've had back there hasn't been good enough. This is the year. There's a gold mine. Like go get you a running back, right?
Well, do you know how happy that's going to make Browns fans if they get another like really solid running back on this team? There's nothing Browns fans love more than running the football. That is going to change everything for people.
Yeah, look, here's the thing that I thought was underrated about Travis Hunter. He said his hobbies were football and fishing. Son, have you come to the right place?
Come on up. We got a lake. We got
nothing but football and fishing in Cleveland. Like
body of water that you can take a boat.
Like you are gonna love Westlake.
He'll be in Crocker Park before we know it.
He might be out there in Willoughby, right? Like he might be more country than we think. But yeah, like he hit up Joe Thomas. He gonna tell you all the spots, right? Yeah. He gonna be fishing in the creek and all that stuff, and it's gonna be great and fun. Yeah, we'll get you right there if that's all you're worried about, Travis. Yeah, okay, we got that. You're gonna like this.
That's a low expectation compared to most, upper draft picks like that. I feel like they want to go to the big cities. He's like, I want to fish and I want to play football.
The hesitation for some fans on Travis Hunter, I feel like has to do purely with like how people feel about Deion Sanders and Shador Sanders
100%.
And not anything to do with like Travis. Because like if you actually listen to Travis and you actually pay attention to Travis, there is nothing that would suggest to you that like, okay, yeah, this dude's going to have a problem in Cleveland, right? Whereas like with Deion and Shador, they give off more of a vibe of like, they definitely want to be in a bigger city, right?
Yeah.
With
Feels
Travis,
like
it's
they even
like
speak for Travis more than he speaks for himself sometimes. You're like,
it's
does
kind
Travis
of like a
do they feel that?
yeah, it's kind of like if Evan Mobley had like Deion Sanders in his corner. Like, what would that look like? It would look like this, right? Where
Yeah.
people are just like casting aspersions onto him. But yeah, that's the thing with Travis is like, I think, the fans really appreciate somebody who plays on both. Like, if you just close your eyes, didn't know who Travis Hunter was, and you describe this guy to a Cleveland Browns fan, hey, he loves fishing. He loves football. He loves football so much that he plays both positions. And he's going to give you like 1,000 snaps in incredible effort on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
You explain something like that to the Browns fan, they just sign me up for that. But then you just like, well, he played for Deion and he's associated with Shador, and everybody's like, I don't know, he's gonna be trouble. It's gonna be Odell's dad again. I'm like,
Right.
this is like maybe with Shador, right? But I even think it's a little bit overrated with him, how people cast that one on him. So I'm like, this
Yeah.
dude, he just want to play football, man. He want to
Yeah.
go to the best spot for him to play some ball, dog. Like that's
Yeah.
it. And we don't even like we're doing all of this just because we know more about him. But it's like Abdul might not want to play in a small city. Like, I don't know how he gets down on this whole thing. Like, I assume he wouldn't. He played at Happy Valley, right, for 4 years. So,
Yeah.
you
And it
know,
does matter, like, as much as we want to say, like, it doesn't matter, just take the best player type of thing, which, I agree with to a certain extent. But like I do want someone to want to be around here and hopefully stick around here past the first contract if they're good enough. So I think it matters to the fans. We can say like these things and if you're looking at the tape and on paper don't matter, but it does matter to the people watching. So I think it's a big deal.
gonna be my big push over the offseason. There is the science part of this, and there is the art of sports, right? And some of this matter. You want guys in the building who want to be where they're at, right? Be where your feet are, is Nick Saban's big saying, right? Got to be where your feet are. You got to want to be where you're at.
Yeah.
And if you have somebody who's constantly thinking about where you want to go instead of where he's at, and that's the thing they're gonna have to figure out with Miles that I'm a bit concerned about. Is like, hey, is he where his feet are? Right? Like, does he want to go somewhere or anything else like that? Like, gotta have guys who are buying in, and hopefully
Right.
they can smooth that thing out because it's gonna be a little bit rocky for the next couple of years
Oh yeah.
with that. So, you got to smooth all that out. But in the meantime, you want to bring guys in, especially with the number 2 overall pick, that you're like, hey, this guy wants to be here. He buys in, and that's not the only reason you draft him, right?
Right.
But
And
if he is somebody you value with the number 2 overall pick, and then you get all of those things with him, right? If that's
yeah.
what brings them over the top with Jalen Milroe, like, hey, I don't think we're going to find somebody who wants to be here in the next few years. Then this dude wants to be, because that's the one thing with Jalen Milroe. I'm like, that dude wants to play in Cleveland. Did you listen to his combine interview? It's super interesting because he talks about like working out with other teams, and they're like, oh yeah, did you work out with the Browns? Like, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to working with them. And they ask him about Tommy Reese. Like, oh yeah, I love Tommy. His faceless lights up. And they're like, how was your workout with the Detroit? How was your meeting with the Detroit Lions? It was cool.
Yeah. Like, but Tommy was, I love Tommy.
He was like, it was cool. They're like, do you hope to play for Detroit? We'll see what God has. Meanwhile, when he talk about Cleveland, it's like, I can't wait. He was like, yeah, I'm looking forward to working with them. And I'm like, oh, he don't want to go to Detroit at all, right? He sees Cleveland as the place he wants to go. And I'm like, hey, you like him enough. If you like him as a prospect, and then he wants to be there, and you think that you're not going to get that level of buy-in potentially, that level of buy-in would be rare, then I'm like, okay, it makes sense, right? Like, your buy-in is important. It's not
And
everything.
not even just like post Miles stuff, like post Deshaun era, where the entire conversation revolving around him and everyone saying he just came here for the money, he doesn't want to be here. That's the conversation we had for the last 4 years. So I think to bring someone in that has a genuine want to be there, I think will matter a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that is our conversation about the draft. Super happy to come on here, have you on here. Let people know where they can find more of your work, more of your written stuff, and more of your video work.
Mhm. Yeah, you can go check out my YouTube channel, Just a Girl from Cleveland. I post some videos there, my podcast episodes there. My podcast is also on Spotify or Apple if you're more a listener. Also doing some video work over at the OBR with Quincy as well. So you can check us out there. And that's about it. Follow me on Twitter, all that. Just ready for the draft to be here, so we have some real things to talk about again. I'm done speculating. Give me our players. I'm ready to go.
You're done seeing people argue about hypothetical mock drafts and which
Yeah,
draft is bigger than your draft and all of
right.
that stuff.
And
Like,
being more right as if any of us know at this point what's gonna happen. We are all probably wrong. So
that is the hilarious thing when people get smug about like,
yeah,
oh, my mock draft is so
you're
much better.
guessing. It's a guess.
And I'm like, half the time, I'm like, I don't even think people understand the whole purpose of a mock draft isn't really to predict anything. It's too many variables to predict anything in a mock draft. It's more or less an exercise that teams use, right? Like, hey, if we're at 15 and this player's here, what do we do? Right.
Yeah.
That is what the mock draft and the conversations that are supposed to be built out of it. But we've missed so much of the plot to be like, oh, I'm trying to predict what's going on. When it's a tool to exercise. Hey, like you like this player, but like, what does it change at
Yeah.
15? Right? Like,
Right.
how does that hit your gut? Like, that's
Without
there.
every year once the draft comes is like at, pick 9, some team takes a player that no one had on their radar, and you're like, "What? Okay." And that sets off everything else that was predicted for the rest of the first round. So, we don't know what's gonna happen, but
Mhm.
I guess that'll be the fun of it too. I'm
Yeah.
ready.
I opt for go for the craziest mock drafts you could do. Like hit that random tab, just see what happens. Like, oh, what I do right
Yeah.
here, right? Because a lot of times too, that happens with mock drafts. And this is the last thing I say before I head off. We value players as certain round prospects simply because the mock draft machine tells us
Yeah.
that player is not normally there at 2, right? Or that player is not normally there in the 3rd round. So like all of a sudden that player's there, and it's like, oh, we gotta take him,
Yeah.
right? But it's like, do you really like that player?
Right.
Like, do you think he's a 3rd round pick? Or, sometimes you'll see people who would draft a player in the 3rd round on some mock draft machines. But then in other mock draft machines, they would never take that player in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, well, this one said it makes sense. And it was closer to the number where my pick was. So I went there. And it's like, this is not what the machine is for, right? The machine is there so you can ask yourself some important questions about what is it that you actually want your team to do
Right.
in some random situations. And that's a conversation to be off there. But if I start talking about sports media literacy, we're just going to lose. This is going to be a 3-hour pod, and OBR is going to be upset at me. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.